We celebrate the Ascension of the Lord. It's how many days after Easter is that? You see, you got 40 days, and then 50 days is Pentecost. When we recognize that Jesus was taken up into heaven and took his seat at the right hand of God, and kind of it reminds me of if you've been to a funeral. You know, oftentimes you have a funeral mass, and then they go to the burial site. At the burial site, depending on what's the preference, family preference, you know, they kind of watch the lowering of the casket or a niche. Then after all the prayers are said, after everything's done, usually what happens? You know, there's usually kind of like an awkward silence because everything's done, but it's just like, okay, now what, right? And it kind of usually takes the funeral director to step in and say, okay, you know, this concludes the funeral services for so-and-so, but, you know, as long as you remember this person in your heart, this person will never die, will live forever, and we invite you to a celebration of life at the restaurant or at the house. No? Is that what's going on with the Ascension? Jesus lived, suffered, died, rose from the dead, right? So as long as you just keep Jesus in your heart, he lives forever. Is that what the Ascension is all about? Jesus ascended to heaven, sits at the right hand of God. Peace out. Keep him in your hearts. Have a nice day. Come for donuts after Mass. Is that... no? Let's go back. It's a very short gospel, very powerful. He gives us clear commandments. He didn't say, you know what, I'm gonna ascend to the Father, just remember me, okay? No. What does he say? Go. Therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always until the end of the age. So they went forth and preached, right? The good news, the 11 apostles, which is why you and I are here in 2026, right? So there's clear instructions, not just remember me in your hearts and I'll live forever. Go out there and preach. Make disciples. Is that what we do? Let's focus on the word preach. Preach. Is that a positive word usually or a negative? Who likes to be preached at? It's usually negative, preaching, right? Oh, stop preaching to me, right? Or I already know, you're preaching to the choir. I already know. Correct? Well, the word preach actually comes from the Greek word kerux, which means to proclaim, to declare, to announce, to herald a message. And it was the message proclaimed by the Kerux, Kerux, the Kerux, who was the official spokesperson of the king. So kind of like, I don't know, modern day Speaker of the House, would you say, right? And the Kerux was the primary connection between the people and the king. And it was a very important position. It was a very noble position. It was a position that people respected. And that's kind of what you and I are asked to do, right? Jesus is not asking us, just remember me, or he's asking us to be his Kerux, to be his spokesperson, because we and I have been entrusted with the message of the gospel, right? And every moment, as we celebrate the Ascension, every moment is an opportunity to preach, right? And that's the homework I ask all of us to preach in whatever way, shape, or form that is. And let me give you some examples here, right? We just celebrated First Communion. Do we have any First Communicants here? We have some. Oh, okay. Oh, they could raise their hand. Can we give them a round of applause, right? Yeah, look at that. You know? Look at that. You know, I didn't celebrate First Communion here, but usually kind of like my message to the first communicants at the end of the First Communion Mass is, wow, this is great, this is wonderful, y'all dressed up nice, and I'm sure you have a party for you. But the big question is, when is going to be your second communion? Right? And oftentimes, the kids are the ones preaching to the parents. Right? Because it's Sunday morning, and the parents like, finally, a day of rest. Finally, I could just sleep in. Just crazy work at work, all these family things going on. And the 7-year-old wakes up the mom and dad and says, Mom, Dad, I want to receive my second communion. How can the parents say no to that? No? So the kids are actually preaching to the parents because you receive Jesus and you want to continue to receive Jesus. My chiropractor, right? I don't go too often, but I remember several years back when I went to see him, and you got that table, and then the chiropractor I don't think they break the bones, but you can hear the cracks. Hear the cracks, right? Yeah? And as he's working on me, and then you're all lined up, and he's like, you got 5 patients, at the same time, and then he sees another patient, and I'm just kind of eavesdropping, and he's actually preaching, right? Like the homily that I gave, he actually makes it better, more precise, more somewhere, and so he's doing the chiropractor thing, and by the way, have you thought about the 10 Commandments? It's like, yes, right? One funeral I attended, you can preach 7-year-old, as a 7-year-old, as an adult, you can continue to preach even after you die, right? One funeral mass, for whatever reason, the family decided to read the last will and testament at the mass, right? And it was grandma who passed away, and she loved her kids, she loved her grandkids, and the testament talked about, my grandchildren, I love you so much, right? And I'll do anything for you, but I talked about how important it is to keep the faith, right? By the time you're hearing this, by the time you're hearing this, and if you have received the sacrament of confirmation, each of you will receive $20,000, right? By the time you hear this, you have not received the sacrament of confirmation, you'll receive $200, right? But don't worry, there's an opportunity for you to keep the faith and receive the sacraments, right? We have many students that received the sacrament of confirmation yesterday from the high school, from St. Barnabas and St. Joseph at the cathedral yesterday, 2 p.m. So I want to recognize them and honor them. And also we have 2 of our, we have a whole altar serve crew over here, and we have Jordan and Nico. I guess today's their last day as altar serving, so we want to recognize them, right? So I think Nico's headed to Boston University, and Jordan Santa Clara, right? And kind of the question for them, is, hey, that's great. You're an altar server, you're a great role model of faith, and how do you continue to preach when you go to college? How do you continue to be a messenger, to be a kiru, right? Even after life here, right? For us, from a more local perspective, right, on the island here in Alameda and the Diocese of Oakland, right? I'm sure you've heard about this, the closure of the 13 churches, right? It's not just local, it's national news. Did you know that? I got buddies from the Midwest and the East Coast. They're like, hey, Steve, you're in Oakland, Alameda, like, what is this? So it's like actually national news about the churches closing, and locally here, St. Barnabas and St. Albert the Great, and it's funny and not funny in some sense because some of the other churches, when they announced their closing, the next Sunday, like, people didn't show up to mass because they thought it already closed. I thought it already closed. So they have to make another announcement saying, you know what, we are closing, but not yet. So please come until in the meantime, we'll let you know when we actually close. So it's like, oh, bad. That's pretty bad, right? But I'm sure you know about this. You're talking about this, right? But to your neighbors as well, right? People are asking, like, so neighbor, hey, I understand you're part of the community here, and you go to church, like, what's going on? Can you tell me about this? Right? This is an opportunity for you and I to be right. If they ask, they're like, well, I don't know. They didn't ask me for permission. I don't know what's going on. I guess they're closing, right? Or, yeah, no, it's so sad. Like, oh, yeah, no, it's because of the bankruptcy. Diocese's got no money, so they just got to pay up. So yeah. Okay, this is a great opportunity for you to be Speaker of the House. This is a great opportunity for you to be a Kerux, to be a spokesperson, an opportunity to preach, right? And you could say something like, hey, you know what? The church is divine. It is perfect because it is instituted by Christ. Yet the church is human and flawed because it includes people like me. It includes people like you, right? And there is no perfect organization. There is no perfect company, no perfect school or country, right? Don't exist. Yet we still love our alma mater. We still love our country. We still love our family, right? And that's the same, the church as the bride that we love, despite its imperfections. And the church is a place of healing, right? And what a great opportunity for you to share, right? Because faith is not something that we share oftentimes, but it's the media, the news, it's theirs. So it's teed up perfectly, set up for you, right? And you could talk about your faith. You could talk about what Jesus means to you, right? Not in a preachy, like forceful way, not in a preaching to the choir way, but in your own personal way of sharing your testimony, sharing your life, of what Jesus means to you, right? To be a Kerux, to be a trusted spokesperson, to preach Jesus everywhere. Not just keep Jesus in your heart and he lives forever, right? So think about that for your homework, and you could do that everywhere, anywhere, right? I remember a while back I was going on a golfing trip, right? And it was an early flight, 5 a.m. flight, and on the Uber you get the Uber, right? Because the other priests, they don't want to drive me to the airport. It's too early, So take the Uber ride, and you order the Uber, and then it's like 5 a.m. And if you're in an Uber, do you actually care like who drives? I guess now they have like the Waymos and all these things, right? But I order the Uber, and I'm just sitting in the back seat, just dozing off for 15 minutes, just to so as we get to the airport, right? And then the driver, turns around and looks at me and says, "Hey, I couldn't help it, but the address that I picked you up, it's the church." And I'm like, "Oh no, oh no." So I said, I could say, you know what, I like to keep my privacy, so I just put the random public location, and I was like, well, now I'm actually the priest, and I'm just going on a golfing trip and da 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 da. I said, oh yeah, da 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 da, and I just kept talking, and then it turns out he's from Colombia. He's from Colombia, and he's back in Colombia, and I was very, very active and at the church and all these things. But here I'm just by myself, and I haven't been to a church in a long time. But it's so nice to see a priest, and then I'm like, okay, and then started talking in Spanish, and boy, it's game over then, you get to the airport, and kind of like the drop-off area, like you can't just park it. There's like security telling you like keep going, right? He just parks, and he won't let me go. But it was a great conversation, and I gave a little bit of, spiritual direction, and then, gave him some suggestions on potential places that he could go. That is a Spanish Mass, and I never talked to him afterwards. I guess I gave him a tip, obviously, but there's no conversation afterwards. But hey, what a great opportunity, right? Any moment, any place. You could be a 7-year-old, you could be an adult, you could be a 77-year-old. Even after you pass away, it's an opportunity for you and I to preach, right? So think about this week. It's not just, okay, Jesus, I love you. He rose from the dead. Alleluia. Easter eggs. And he's ascended into heaven. Peace out. I'll keep you in my heart. And as long as I keep you in my heart, you and I were good. No. Go and preach. Go be a Kerux. In whatever way, shape, or form that looks like this week.